Okay, going to call a special meeting of council order for Tuesday, October 29th. Take approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Noxana.
That the October 29th, 2024 special council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Clickash. All in favor? Carried. New business, draft zoning bylaw review. Draft zoning bylaw to be reviewed with a consultant team in preparation for the zoning bylaw open house. Welcome. Floor is yours. No, I have you on. It is. It's probably here. It's on here.
It should be red.
Let me just switch it out with a different mic. Because it's red on my screen. I'm not sure about if it's on yours, Jesse, or not. There it goes.
Oh, so when this getting red? Here we go. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council, and thank you for the opportunity for our project team kind of present it to you. Is that working?
I think it's. I think there's something wrong with the wiring back there. I don't know, Jesse, if you touched something or not. Somebody did. Roxanne. Too many people talking.
Yes. I'm not touching it. Okay.
There you go. It should be fine now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I know this is really a quick meeting put together. So for this meeting, we have two part of this presentation there. The first part is we would like to run with you the history of this project. It has been 2 years, and then this is our third trip to do this whole engagement. So the first one, that was 2022, and then, the turnout was pretty good, and we also, we had our field reports there, so I guess I can I run that? Or
Which document did you want?
the first one, that would be the 221011, sorry.
Open House Board?
Yeah, Open House Boards 2022.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. So do you run it, or I should run it? Thank you. So, yes. Yeah, that was early October 2022. We had, this is the first open house we had for this zoning bylaw, and we have done, after we finished the background review, research, and what's happening with the current, understand what's in the current zoning bylaw, and then also we had a few key meetings with the key staff, about their feedbacks, what's happening with the current bylaw, is there anything that need to be improved, or is there anything they wish that could be different? So that was the timing we started in summer, and then we kind of wrap it up. We start this whole open house that in October 2022, and in front of you, that was the board at that time. And also it links to the survey. So we also had a survey, similar question that with the board, and we sent out to the community. Basically, for the board, yes, we kind of have something similar you can see is what's the zoning. But at that time, we showed that we are at a phase 3. So we had we had done the background, this is phase 3. And then we also working on this phase 4 after the zoning bylaw. Because after this engagement, this is the current bylaw, what it looks like. And then we focus a few more questions about the housing type, and that's the most important part for residential, the residents. The lot size, we talking about tiny homes, short-term rentals, home occupation, accessory building, and also what's the planning for town center. There was urban agriculture. Yeah, renewable. That's a trendy thing that's very general. We asked a question and we did get feedbacks there. So that's the board we have at that time. And then I will.
So just as Chen, oh, you can open up the other report, but those key topics that we focused on in that initial open house were either advised by kind of what's going on in zoning currently in Western Canada or in smaller communities, as well as issues that the administration noted with the current zoning bylaw. So that's why we focused on housing, short-term rentals, urban agriculture, et cetera. So I just wanted to clarify.
And luckily, 3 years, and Britt and I, we work on this project. There's no change in personnel. We kind of, and also we also work together on the OCP for the district. So we kind of carry on a lot of the policies that in the OCP, it sets some, asking for some policies related to this zoning bylaw change. We kind of carry that and drag it all to the zoning bylaw here. So this is the what we heard report that we created November 2022. And they basically, this one is a summary of what we ask and how people respond to that. And we also, this is some attachment that we send out for newsletter with that mailed out. And then there's a picture about people attending, response on the posters. I wouldn't really go through that in the detail, but just instead give you some quick go through what we did for this whole project. So yeah, that's whole engagement round. I know it's 100 pages. I know because there's also a summary of how the survey has been summarized and then the comments and all that. So this is the what we heard report at that time. And feel free to jump in, Britt. Anything.
Yeah, so this includes survey responses. We did an online survey for the initial open house in October of 2022. It includes the responses that we actually received on the boards, because you probably remember they were interactive and you could stick stickers on them. And it also summarizes the meeting notes we took when we were meeting with administration about the current zoning bylaw and kind of issues and changes that they wanted to see. So this is a fairly comprehensive report. And then Chen will, or Jesse will open up the key recommendations report, which is next. I'm not sure when we finalize this. We'll see the date in a second. December. Okay, so the key recommendations report is really, I would say, a very important part of us drafting the new zoning bylaw, because this is kind of like the roadmap for what the zoning bylaw will be. So it lays out, it does summarize kind of what we included in our What We Heard report. It summarizes the policy changes that were directed by the OCP that zoning needs to reflect. And then it also summarizes our recommendations for the zoning bylaw, which includes a simpler layout than the existing bylaw, the use of kind of these tables that we have in the zoning bylaw, which didn't exist in the current one. Anything else that's important? Yeah. Yeah, so this is the one that we kind of really rely on when we were drafting our draft zoning bylaw to make sure that we kind of captured everything that we discovered throughout our process.
This is the.
Push your button,
This
please.
is the table that we want to particularly talking about. This is the policy that we reviewed it. We feel like it's important to bring it to the zoning bylaw, including the OCP.
Okay, and I got a question for you, 1 second.
This
Counselor
one,
Julik,
sorry,
please wait.
December 2023, the key recommendations report was from what date, sorry? Just so if I wanted to go back into my email and get a copy of it.
2022, December.
22, I believe.
December 22, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So, yeah, this chart is, I know it's quite detailed, we won't go through that, but just letting you know that we've been review a few relevant policy documents, including OCP, including, I believe, there's a design guidelines for a town center. There should be a few more economic development documents. Anyway, it's too small.
Yeah,
Can't
economic
read it.
development, secondary suites were in there. And then some additional, town center, expanding the commercial that is permitted. Yeah, I think that, I mean, we'll talk about most of those things in our review of our boards for tomorrow.
Yeah. So we just trying to explain that how we come to what we have right now for the draft bylaw. So that's part of that. And also community, there's, for example, Timber Ridge Community Energy Bylaw. There's, design guidelines and also housing needs report.
So yeah, we reviewed a couple of those additional policy documents too as kind of part of our background to make sure that our zoning bylaw aligned with those plans.
Yeah. And there's also age-friendly plan. I did that. So, yeah, again, that's only 2 pages about the engagement result. There's a key themes there. And then there's also issue identified by the administration. That's also the summary for our meeting with town staff, district staff. Okay. And issue identified by the community. So here we comes to the key recommendation is section 4. Key recommendation. So that's basically overall structure, format, and style. And also we suggested to change some of the format to the chart, just make it more user-friendly. And in this one, there's 2 charts recommended, and then also the text and language, maps, graphics, we add color to it instead of the just black and white. And then administration and interpretive clause, basically adding a lot of definitions. That's in our recommendation. And then there's adding a general regulation for quite a few uses, like irrigation. So what I have here is temporary use, setbacks, site coverage, expectation. So there's a general regulation, and also there's a the use-specific regulation, including home occupation. I believe there is one. Many of them. So use that specific regulation and then match to this chart. So this is the use chart. So this is the use. We kind of categorizing residential use, commercial use, and at the end of this chart, look at this applies. We have this use specific regulation. So what that means is in the bylaw itself, it had a particular section that matched this specific use. So for example, daycare. So let's say if there's a community daycare, it's under community use. And then there's also this, you can see a note there saying applies. Then you go back to the bylaw saying what specific things about daycare, what are the regulations? Then you go back to the bylaw and look at daycare, and then they will be definitely quite a few items saying what, for the daycare, what's the regulation? The size, how many kids that need to get some certain approval, that types of requirements. Home occupation, same thing. There's a home occupation specific terms about what's major home occupation, what's minor, what's office. So they all kind of summarize. So under each zoning, what types of uses allowed, and for not for all of the use, that for some particular ones that may have a concern, then we will have a specific apply. So there's an apply here, then you can go back. That's a hint. Go back, okay, check the bylaw, there's a particular section about that use. So this is one of the connections that we want to make. And then, so general, all other zones.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's it for the end. So we have, that's the key recommendation there. We do have a few. On the back, I believe that's the definition
Yeah,
we add.
just add it,
We
yeah.
suggested to add a lot of definitions because zoning bylaw definition matters. Really, you always have to go to that section. It's more like a dictionary. So what do you mean by you had an accessory suite, for example? Then go to the definition and figure it out. So this is a definition.
And that was one of the key pieces we heard from administration, is that the current zoning bylaw kind of leaves a lot up to interpretation, which makes it harder to, approve applications or permits. So they wanted something a little bit, that provided a little bit more guidance, that made their job a bit easier, so.
So, yeah, that's the key recommendation report. So I believe the next one, I think that's pretty much it. Because we have three. Yes, that's it. You definitely familiar with your zoning bylaw there. This is the current zoning bylaw. So I believe the newer version had a major rewrite to that. So I don't want to get into too detailed, but if you compare like the definition portion, like maybe there's like 5 pages here, but in the new bylaw, you might got like 10, 15 pages for just the definition. So it's so different from the previous one. So it's so hard just to update it. It's better just, redo the whole thing. So that was the decision at that time.
Yep.
Yep.
Should we put the boards?
Yeah, maybe we should go to the boards now.
Yeah.
Just any questions?
Council? Councilor Julik?
I wouldn't say a question so much as I did appreciate all of the detail within the definition, so I really appreciated those. I don't have anything specific. I'll wait for you guys. Like, there's a few things I highlighted, but it might even be a question for me for tomorrow because it's nothing specific necessarily, but just wanted to say I really appreciated the very detailed definitions.
Thank you.
So, let's open the board.
Okay, sure. Okay, so these are the boards we are presenting tomorrow at our open house event, but we'll run through them with you as well because it leads us to some questions we have. I won't go through the preliminary boards, kind of just what our project's about, what is zoning, why are zoning bylaws important. You guys know that, I don't need to explain that to you. We have our timeline. We added a phase here compared to our last set of boards, which I think had 5 phases in total, but we're at phase 5 now, and then phase 6. After we get feedback tomorrow, we might make some additional changes depending on what we hear, and then we hope to finalize the bylaw and get it adopted. We have the current zoning map for reference. And then the new zoning maps also for reference, hard to see on the screen here, but we have bigger copies for tomorrow. Okay, so key topics and recommended changes. So these were the kind of most important items that we made changes on in this current zoning bylaw. So we'll just go through them a little bit today. Okay, provincial scale multi-housing initiative. So I'm sure some of you might be familiar with this already, but it's a legislative change from the BC government to support the development of secondary suites and accessory dwelling units to provide more affordable long-term housing in the province. So this legislation, I'm just going to read right off the board, requires that local governments implement certain zoning and planning requirements to remove barriers for the creation of more secondary suites and accessory dwelling units. So in the community the size of Tumbler Ridge, I think there's different legislative requirements for different size communities in British Columbia, but for Tumbler Ridge, what the province does require is that for all zones that allow a single family dwelling unit, so in our case, that is R1, R2, R3, and that's it. A secondary suite or accessory dwelling unit has to be permitted, regardless of kind of getting approvals from the municipality.
Yes. Right now, what we proposed here is basically is a minimum requirements from this whole provincial legislation change. Because they also encourage municipalities if they want a more higher density. For example, we talked to two municipalities earlier this year, and one of them they really short of developable land, and they kind of on the housing stress there, and people need house, and so they actually allowing one single lot, allowing two principal building. And plus two secondary, for like one for each, right, for the principal building, or two access suite. So accessory suite. So that means they allowed to have five in total, 5 dwelling units. I'm talking about units on one single house lot. So that's what they are doing. So that's Warfield actually.
But yeah, that's not.
That's not here. I get it. But just letting you know that what we propose here is the minimum requirement from the provincial legislative change. So basically here, what that means to everybody, I guess this is also many people need to know that as well. The residents for one lot, R1, R2, R3, you can have one principal building and one secondary suite or accessory suite.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So secondary suite is like a basement suite, and an accessory suite would be a garage suite, so a carriage suite or a garden suite, depending on what grade it's at. Garden would be at grade, carriage would be above a garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, they can have either one. Like that's the maximum we're talking about. So basically, they're allowing 2 units on one lot. So this is the minimum requirements from the provincial.
And I think we just wanted to keep at the minimum requirements because that's the feedback we heard, but also parking, we heard on-street parking is an issue. So right now that the secondary suite or the accessory dwelling unit have to have their own off-street parking space, as well as the principal dwelling unit has to meet their minimum requirements too. So these policies assume that the residents or whomever is living within the secondary suites do have an on-site parking space. They're not forced to park on the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the slide, very hard to.
Just got 1 second here. Councillor Julik?
I just want to clarify, when you're talking, so we're allowed, because I had read something else when I was reading. I had thought that we were going to allow another dwelling on the property. I know we talked about it a lot, but just reading that, so what, I just want to clarify that we're allowing one print, in this zoning bylaw, the minimum is that we have, so my own home, and I could have a secondary suite and an accessory suite, or just one or the other? So the secondary, I could have a secondary, like basement suite, as long as I had parking. If it was a 2-bedroom basement suite, would that mean I would have to have 2 parking spots, or just one dwelling, so 1 spot? Oh, that, you can tell me about that later, but that, so far as the housing part goes, we're not talking about carriage houses or tiny homes in the back of a lot.
Carriage homes were just mentioned.
Accessory suite, including garden suite and carriage
Carriage homes.
suite.
yeah.
Carriage home. So which means it could stand alone by itself, or it could be on top of the garage if the garage is on the backyard.
Or in the.
So, yeah, either one,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I understood then. Thanks.
Yeah, we talked a lot about tiny homes in our past engagement processes, and in this bylaw, we don't use those words, tiny homes, but that would apply to an accessory suite, I would
Yeah,
categorize it in.
Yeah, you could do that, like, remember, like, last year we had that workshop, right? We also sitting here for a whole day, we talk about, that was one of the topics there. So we changed the zone there, I believe because we turned our small law R1, like here, like, this is a new one, but so far, that's basically, at this moment, I think with this town, we don't have any law zone as R1. So that's, we can consider it a smaller law, but we didn't really reduce the size. Because at that time, the current zoning bylaw already allow these types of housing. However, just no lots actually zoned as that. So we still kept the same. We didn't really go smaller.
Councillor Clickash?
Yes, so it's my understanding that if I live on this lot and I have another lot right next to it, I can put on a garage or a carriage type building on a separate lot?
You don't, we are talking about just one lot, right? So if you separate that, also the separate lot, the lot beside you, that could also qualified for one single house and with one accessory suite or basement suite.
It has to be owner occupied.
Yes, it has to be owner occupied.
Yeah, but we asked this before. In fact, I asked for it, and I wanted that dropped, that you didn't have to live in that site. That I could build that house next door to me with a garage underneath, say 1,200 square foot garage and a house on top, but I wouldn't be living there. I would be renting it.
You don't need to, because that's just one building, right? You're talking about the
This is 2 different lots.
Yeah, but if you, on your second lot, if you're just building a house and you want to rent that house, there's no restrictions in here. But if you want to build a house, rent the principal house, but then also build a secondary suite or accessory suite, this bylaw doesn't allow that at the moment. If you want to develop a secondary or accessory suite and have that rented out, you currently have to live in your principal building to do that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But yeah, like if you own a house on a lot, you can rent it. I mean, that's zoning is, yeah, not, yeah.
So you can have 2 principal residences on one lot?
No,
Why, if you amalgamate 2 lots together and remove the center line, why couldn't you have that?
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
And then you can have
You
2
make 2
principal
lots as
residences
one.
on that lot.
It depends on how you call it, because principal building is different from accessory suite, right? So you can have accessory one, the smaller one, that could be your accessory suite, and then your principal is still the one big single house there.
Okay.
Follow up, Councillor Clickash, good?
Yes, thanks.
So can we just get clarity on that? So if somebody has, whether it's 2 lots side by side or they have 2 houses in the community, why would they not be allowed to do accessible suites underneath? Even if that's not their principal location? if we're trying to add housing in a housing crisis. So what I've seen, so it's my understanding from the provincial government, that's allowed. We're just not allowing within our zoning.
Correct. So we kept that policy provision, which can be removed based on your feedback, but it's hard to see up on the screen, but, so one of the requirements of the secondary suite, Part E, is the principal building on the parcel containing the secondary suite must be occupied by the owner of the principal building. That's not required by the government. That just provides the community of Tumbler Ridge to have a bit more control about how that secondary suite is rented if the principal owner lives in the principal building. However, that can be removed. It depends that's something that we can speak more about.
Yeah, that's subject to council's decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it comes down to how much control you want the owner of the home to have over kind of what they're renting out on their property.
Right. So to me, what we see in Tumbler Ridge right now is a rental crisis. Right? So it's hard to find rentals within the community. There, I can't remember the number of houses up for sale right now, but there's more added here and there. But where the crisis comes down is to rentals. People are, that's what, it's tough to buy a location in Tumbler Ridge when you first start a new job. You're not sure if it's going to last, maybe you don't like it. But for those individuals coming here, whether it's for one of our mining companies or another company, is they want to rent. There's no rentals. So to me, it seems like, I'm not sure what's in our in our current zoning bylaw right now, but I'm pretty sure we already have some of those in our community where a person has bought a second housing complex and has built a suite in the basement and rented as two different units. So to me, as long as my understanding back then was as long as there was enough off-street parking. So they weren't parking on the street. And I believe that's already in our bylaws that you have to have enough parking stalls for your residents. So they're not on the street.
Yeah.
That's totally subject to council decision. It just, currently, in our draft bylaws, it's a draft one, it says the homeowner need to live in the principal building in order to make the secondary suite or accessory suite working, rented out. But that's not the requirement of the provincial. That could be removed.
Yeah, and it would open up more rentals, you're right, if there's a owner who owns multiple properties within the community and then can build multiple suites on a parcel, so.
Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakake. I think I'd be in favor of removing that stipulation that is to allow for, even if somebody doesn't own the building, to create a secondary suite, to allow more of that. Do we need to make a motion to make that change?
It could be, okay, it's totally up to you. If you want to make a motion now, we will incorporate that into the final bylaw. And you can always keep that draft, but when we send it to you, you will vote on that secondary, like 3 readings and public hearing, that whole process. There's any time you can incorporate it, or we even can propose the final draft just based on what we heard. It doesn't need to be a final adoption, right? So it just, we heard, we put that into the bylaw, but still draft. At the end of the day, you will still vote on it, so you don't necessarily become a motion if you don't want to.
Just a follow-up, Councilor Norbury, like, you're good with that? Like, we can make the changes then, or they can add it in red for now, and it could be something we debate?
I mean, I think if we have an opportunity to debate it now, right, like why make it more complicated in the future if we all know now that we don't want to have the stipulation of you have to be living in the home to create a secondary suite.
Yeah. Ms. Scott? Just want to get clarification. We can do that. We're good with making motions, or can we just add it without motions?
Whichever you prefer. I mean, that's.
Okay. Wishes of
You can
council.
make that motion now, or you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Councilor Julik?
I'd like to wait until the open house tomorrow. Like if we're able to have staff take some notes today about stuff we're specifically kind of stuck on or that we feel strongly about, and then see what the open house brings. Because maybe we have people in our community who do not want that. My thought is the opposite side of not having, or having rental properties is so then if we have people that live out of town, they build a house, have a basement suite, and then an accessory building, then we have absentee landlords, and that can cause more of a weight on bylaws, what my thought is. But if that's what our residents are wanting, I'm okay with that too. But I see the positive part of having the landlord be part of the house, like in that space. Because they're not saying you can't rent a whole house, they're just saying if you're renting a house, you can't rent an
No, you
accessory
can't
building.
you can't build it,
Because you can't rent it.
correct.
So you could build it, it could sit there empty, but you couldn't rent it. Just to make sure that I'm understanding.
Councillor Clickash?
Yes, well, we basically have the same thing right now as somebody owns a house and then buys the house next door, and he wants to rent that out to someone. You're not living in that house, but you're renting that house out. This is a very small change to make this work here. We're just arguing over nothing. It's already here, and we're just moving along.
Yeah, if somebody wants to make a motion or it's something we can debate later, it's up to council. Councillor Norbury, sorry.
Thank you. So, Councillor Julik made the comment of, well, what does the community want to say? Are we going to be specifically asking at the open house? Yes. How do you feel about having secondary suites if an owner does not live in it?
Well, we outline the policies on these boards with kind of our draft policies, and we ask kind of what they think of them. So we're not specifically saying, do you agree with Part E or not? I mean, we could do that tomorrow specifically, but we don't specifically ask that. We kind of ask, do you like these changes? Yeah.
Because, I mean, my thoughts is if we're not actually asking the question, no one will say anything, right? So I can appreciate getting public input, but if you're not asking the right questions, you won't get the right answers. So, yeah, okay. I mean, if people feel that it's fine, we'll leave it.
Oh, we can quickly create one poster, and if Jesse can pin it out for us. Thank you. We can add that in.
Okay, thank you. Council's good with that? Councillor Julik?
The way I understand the open house is that anybody can respond to any part of it that they want. Like, you just are gonna have big parts of where the changes are going to be up on the wall to bring those to people's attention. So anybody can respond to any part of it that they want. Thanks.
We also prepared, Jesse helped us to prepare this hard copy of the new bylaw and put it there if they want to read through it. Yeah, I know it's so hard to ask every single question about everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I just know there's already houses here that are doing it. So that's my concern is, if we're gonna put it in there, we're not allowing it, but it's already happening. So, okay, go ahead.
So we have another board on this provincial small-scale multi-unit housing initiative. We define accessory dwelling units, which is part of this legislative requirement. And then we also note on this board at the bottom the how we've updated the zoning bylaw to comply with this provincial legislation. So we adjusted some definitions. We created a section on secondary suites in the bylaw pertaining to size, shared utilities, relationships to the principal building, and we have a section on accessory suites as well. I'm looking at the wrong screen here.
They don't connect.
And then we have implications of the policy change, and again, ask the community what they think, and hopefully they will share their opinions with us tomorrow. Okay. Are there any more questions about the secondary suites or accessory?
Council? Nope, we're good.
So we will move on to short-term rentals. So I'll just read what we have on the board here. So based on feedback received during the initial engagement phase for the project, the community indicated strong support for reviewing and adjusting short-term rental regulations to make them a viable option for tourists. While bed and breakfasts were favored in residential areas, which is what the current bylaw has, there was a preference for keeping Airbnb or VRBO type rentals, which would be considered short-term rentals in residential and commercial areas. So we've revised the short-term rental policies in the zoning bylaw. And some of those policies, I don't have them written completely out on the boards, but short-term rentals are permitted in R1, R2, R3, all the residential zones, so including the manufactured home lots and home parks, as well as town center commercial. The short-term rentals, there is a licensing process, which there's details in the zoning bylaw, a notification letters to neighbors, the opportunities for neighbors to provide comments and feedback to the district on the application for the short-term rental.
Yeah, I wanna we discussed this last year in our little workshop there. There was a concern about having that short-term rental in the residential area. So, yeah, we wanna bring that, maybe we wanna clarify it now, or maybe it could be later, but we just wanna kind of, I believe that public engagement, they coming back saying they need more flexibility. So it means they want it in residential and commercial. And last year, our conversation is we better put that into the commercial area and leave the residential kind of quiet neighborhood. So that was the discussion, we had to talk about it last year. So I guess the question is, are we supporting them? So far, the draft bylaw, we support the short-term rental in R1, R2, R3. So basically, it's in the residential area and also the commercial area. And we want to bring this to your attention. So again, it's subject to council's decision. If we trying to get that one out of the residential, only stay in the commercial, yeah, again, let us know.
So just to clarify too, the short-term rental would be, you could rent your entire house as an Airbnb to someone for a week up to, we have restrictions on, I think, 30 consecutive days. So you could rent your mobile home, your manufactured home, your apartment unit, or your whole house.
Now, just on that before we go to councilors, what happens if your house has two different rooms available? Isn't that the same thing if we go back the opposite way when I can rent the top floor as one unit and the bottom is a second unit, but you can't rent both as one? Are we in the same point when it comes back to not having the principal owner living there?
Yeah. Short-term rental, we had discussion today, actually, that was exactly on our lunch table. So currently, we talking about the owner need to occupy, then we can do short-term rental. Or we can, and then the secondary suite and accessory suite, we just heard from you saying, yeah, maybe we don't need that. Let's wait until see people talk about it. But current draft bylaw, it says the owner need to live in the house in order to make it a short-term rental.
For an accessory suite, though.
Yeah, let's not talk about the accessory suite now. Just the short-term rental. Yes, the owner needs to occupy. That's how he proposed right now in the draft bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Noxana?
Thank you. I'm not in favor of demanding that an owner occupy a short-term rental. I think that we have several Airbnbs here in town that are quite successful, and this past year has shown us the need for this sort of accommodation in our community. So I'm in favor of keeping them in all zones, but not as owner occupied.
Gotcha.
Councilor Julik?
As I'm reading 5.8 here, I don't see anywhere where it actually talks about the owner having to be part of it. It just says a short-term rental must not be conducted within a building with an occupied secondary suite or a bed and breakfast. So, like, is that what you're meaning? Like, because if you're renting the whole house. So anyways, like, I think that those things can be tweaked out. For me, my concern around the short-term rentals is having a maximum percentage of them being in our community. Because if you think about a short-term rental versus a long-term rental, if you're doing a short-term rental, you can charge more by the day. And my concern is that when we have short-term rentals, then you lose the long-term rentals, which has been proven out in the bigger centers, which is why the province came in with that legislation because of the cost. So my concern in 5.8 is not necessarily, like, I think that those pieces can be tweaked after we get some feedback. My biggest concern is looking for feedback around how people perceive that and if they would like a maximum, because I know I sure will be fighting for a maximum amount of short-term rentals, i.e. Airbnb VRBOs. Because it does say the maximum length of stay for any guest in a short-term rental is 30 consecutive days and not more than 90 days in a calendar year, but that's only one guest. Because like if it was like you could only do like, but for one guest, it's easy enough to maybe track that. But anyways, that's where my concern is if we have too many short terms, and it's proven out internationally, if you look at tourism responses and stuff, that it just becomes too expensive for people to live in a community.
So, apologize. I messed up with the other one. We had a little chat this today. Short-term rental, currently, there's no owner's requirement live in the house. Sorry, yes. I messed up with the other one.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. I'd echo what Councillor Julik has to say about limiting the numbers. Can you tell us how the provincial guidelines are moving now with short-term rentals? Because I'm reading, briefly, I'm not really up to date on the legislation, but it sounds like you do need to be a part of, you can only have Airbnbs if it's part of your primary residence.
There's no regulation about that. I know they had a few policies there, actually not a provincial, it's actually national. Federal level, they did provide a short-term rental one. But there was some municipalities, we've been dealing with a few in Calgary area that they are, Banff, right? So Banff area, they had this, so they make this short-term rental and the rental and the long-term rental, they make it two different uses. So they are allowed it at a certain time, and the percentage, they also control the percentage is how much like short-term rental houses or units, how many of them that in the neighborhood been approved. So they kind of control that within, that's how they control it, saying, oh, for this neighborhood, we're looking at 30%. So once they approve one, yes, they have to kind of letting their neighbor know we're approving one. If you're not happy, go and appeal it. So they had a process for that. And then they record it in their admin side record saying we approve how many this one. So they use that to control it. And also the guideline also, again, depends also the whole municipality, how they feel about the economic development. So this is a very typical example that you're trying to support the local job and local residents' income, and at the same time, the planning, how you trying to restrict it, like, so how much restrictions you want to put on that particular things. So it's I don't believe there's a regulation about it, but it's more like how the local government want to control it. So that's that you allow in a certain zone or you don't. You record a percentage. That's another one that it is kind of quite admin heavy. I would say the staff will be quite busy because there's a record they need to check on, and when they approve this, they need to let the neighbor know. It's adding more to admin's burden. How much work they need to do for that.
I think you need a license application though, policy 5.8.3, you need a business license application for a short-term rental. So that's how the municipality or the district could kind of limit the number potentially through that application process, which I think could alleviate, Tumbler Ridge from being completely full of these type of short-term rentals, which again is known to decrease rentals for long-term residents and increase prices for rentals. So that's something that we could definitely consider putting in, yeah.
Yeah, that could.
Thank you. Got Ms. Scott, and then I got Councillor
I
Colcash.
just want to provide some clarification that there actually is some legislation regarding provincial residence requirements. And so currently, the legislation reads that a principal residence requirement applies across BC in municipalities with a population of 10,000 and over, and some smaller communities, and that the area where the principal residence requirement applies may change annually, as some local governments can request to opt in or opt out. So when these regulations came into effect, municipalities that were less than a population of 10,000 did have the opportunity at that time to opt in. But there was a deadline for doing that. But you still can do that, it just wouldn't be considered again until next year. But I just wanted to clarify that there actually is some legislation, so communities over 10,000, there is a requirement that it has to be owner occupied.
Thank you. Councillor Colcash?
Yes, I don't know, are we permitting Airbnbs and short-term rentals?
Yes,
We are,
yes.
yeah, because they're very lucrative.
Yeah, no, we are. I don't know that, like, I don't know what the licensing fee and all that is, but we do have it. It was something that was put in.
Okay.
Any questions about short-term?
We like to support it in a residential area. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it.
Okay.
Anybody have an issue with it?
I only do around the parking, like that's my consideration. Like I don't know how we would monitor the parking, and that's the biggest frustration now with any of that stuff. So how would we monitor the parking spots? Like I think that would have to be included in the bylaw. And again, these kind of things can be tweaked out, but this would be one of the things that I would want to discuss when we talk about short-term rentals being in residential zones, is how we manage the parking.
We can definitely add a clause there that the parking for the short-term rental, definitely, it should be on-site, should not be on the street. Yeah, but I mean, the housing type already kind of require how many units they will have, right? The parking slot. So all we can do is, at least that provides something that people can, administration can actually do the enforcement implementation, saying that you have to limit your parking on site.
Ms. Scott, can you, and maybe you won't be able to answer this tonight, but something maybe to look into in regards to our licensing of short-term. Do we have anything of that in place now? Because to me, if we put it into play now, would the ones that are already approved not be grandfathered in? Because I know I know of a few, there's no way they have enough parking today.
I don't know the answer to that, if that's a current requirement, I don't know.
Thanks.
Okay, so we will move on to home occupation, something else we explored in our process. So based on feedback received, the community suggested that the district review home occupation policies and consider developing a tiered structure pertaining to the impacts of various home occupations. So it was noted that low-impact home occupations should not be limited to smaller lots, but should be permitted on all lot sizes, while high-impact home occupations should be restricted to larger lots. So based on this feedback, we created 3 categories of home occupations. We have major, minor, or office, and those definitions are based on the impact of the actual type of occupation. So we have these in section 5.10 of the draft zoning bylaw. 5.10. So home occupation shall not be a use that produces any offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odor. A home occupation shall not result in any exterior alterations to the building that are not consistent with the residential character of the neighborhood. Should not utilize materials or processes that produce flammable, explosive vapors or gases. Shall not be a use that requires the delivery or removal of materials or products in bulk by commercial vehicles. Shall not involve the treatment of or boarding of animals, and shall not involve the parking of heavy industrial equipment. So in terms of the specific definitions, the home occupation minor So this is kind of the low, well, not the lowest impact, but a low impact home occupation. So have no on-site employees other than the residents of the principal dwelling, receive no more than 5 clients or deliveries per week, and have no commercial vehicle associated with its operation. So home occupation office, which is the lowest impact, have no on-site employees other than the residents of the principal dwelling, receive no clients or deliveries, and have no commercial vehicle. So the difference between office and minor is minor allows no more than 5 deliveries or clients per week. Office doesn't allow any. And then we have home occupation major. So you can employ 1 person to work on site other than the permanent residents of the dwelling, receive more than 5 clients or deliveries per week, but we have the maximum number of which shall be at the discretion of the development authority based on the nature of the business, and be required to provide 1 additional on-site parking stall in addition to the minimum parking requirements of the principal use. So on this board, we ask the community to kind of review these policies and give us their feedback. I'm just going to do one more board and then we can discuss. So home occupations, just for clarity, may include an accountant, architect, draftsperson, dentist, barber, beautician, naturopath, massage therapist, tailor, pet groomer, locksmith, family day home, small-scale food prep, small-scale at-home sales. But a home occupation cannot include the repair or painting of vehicles, trailers, boats, commercial equipment, welding or machine shops, spray painting, or spray coating operation. Any questions?
Councillor Jilic.
I'm just wondering why the breakdown of the occupation, the home occupation breakdowns. Like, are we looking at possibly charging a different business license based on that? Like, I know that that could be an option for all the things, but was there a reason that you broke it down into that many different spots? I don't know if we had that before.
I think depending on the category, there has to be a neighborhood is there a notification process? Yeah. Can I see the?
I think it allows in a different zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends on the neighborhood you are in. And I think the major one, it would go
Yeah, major is only allowed in R2 and R3. So a larger lot. Minor is kind of allowed across the board, as well as office. Another item I should add while Chen's looking that up is we do have home industry, which is not allowed in the current bylaw, but it is allowed in this bylaw. Home industry is obviously something that's more noxious and has more disturbances than a home occupation, but we only allow home industry in R3, so in the rural residential large lot zone. Any other comments or questions?
Nope.
Okay. Right. Which screen do I look at? Okay, town center commercial. So, based on feedback received, indicated residents would like to see more commercial establishments in Tumbler Ridge's town center. So the zoning bylaw update process reviewed the existing permitted uses and incorporated additional permitted uses to provide additional flexibility into the establishment of town center commercial uses. So in the principal use table, table 5.2, under column C1 are what we have suggested as being permitted in the town center commercial zone. So it's quite a lot. There's certain things we don't allow, which are a drive-through, a commercial vehicle wash, a greenhouse, nursery, a hostel. certain accessory uses, family day homes, home industry, obviously, agriculture and industrial uses, but it's quite a wide array.
It's longer than it was before.
The ones that we kept out, I would say, are vehicle-heavy uses, kind of like a drive-in or drive-through business or a larger commercial establishment. We also allow commercial mixed use in the C1 zone and certain townhomes and apartments as well. I don't know what else to. Yeah. Any questions, concerns?
Council? None?
Super. Okay, so urban agriculture. So this is something we definitely, I remember talking about in our open house 2 years ago. So based on feedback, the community indicated an overwhelming support for establishing regulations that allow urban ag, such as bee and hen keeping in residential areas, while controlling its use to prevent disturbances within the district. So section 5.11 and 5.12 contain policies for minor ag operations and backyard beekeeping. So ag operation minor, so this can include backyard hen keeping, not beekeeping, and it's permitted in a number of zones, R1, manufactured home lot, R2, R3, future development park, and rural resources. So to permit an ag operation minor, a property owner must not generate offensive odors, create nuisance via storage and composting, and it must adhere to the animal responsibility bylaw if the operation involves the keeping of animals. So for an apiary or a backyard beekeeping, this is only permitted in R2, R3, and industrial M1 and RR. And there's a number of restrictions in terms of beehives and their locations to lot lines and whether they require a fence. And I'm just going to scroll. We have more policies on this page. So you can have a number of beehives based on the size of the property. They can't be located. They have to be face away from adjacent properties. And there's some other restrictions as well. And these restrictions were taken from other similar zoning bylaws. Chen or I are not beekeeping experts, so.
Me either.
Maybe one day. Any questions?
Council? Nope.
Okay, this is almost the last one, second last. Renewable energy and sustainable building technology. So we have included a section on this in the draft zoning bylaw, section 5.18. And we've included some select policies on the board. So renewable energy systems include solar panels and wind turbines. We have height restrictions of these in certain residential zones. A development impact assessment might be required by the development authority to determine the impact on wildlife, birds, and pets. To ensure public safety, security fences have to be around the technology. And when an energy system becomes obsolete, it shall be immediately removed at the site. There's more policies in the bylaw.
Questions from council? Nope.
Okay. Okay, accessible design. So there was an accessibility study, is that right? Design guidelines, yeah. So that's why we kind of included a portion of accessible design into this zoning bylaw, as it complies with higher level policy. So there's specific requirements for accessibility design in multi-dwelling housing. So just multi-dwelling, not single family or duplex, commercial and institutional development. So section 4.18 of the zoning bylaw contains these policies. Again, they're fairly standard, but it just outlines expectations of developers and what they should build to ensure that their buildings are accessible. So every parcel that is subject of a building permit application for a multiple dwelling housing, commercial institutional development may only be developed in accordance with the section of the zoning bylaw. There's restrictions on slopes, access ramps, and on-site pedestrian walkways, some guidelines there in terms of lighting to promote safety. But yeah, that would comply with the age-friendly plan. Yes. That was adopted in 2019.
Councillor Jilek.
So that plan that you're referring to, 2019, that's the most recent act that we have staff working on already?
No, that's a different act. It's
Okay.
coming down from the government. This other one was an accessibility thing that previous council had worked through.
Oh, okay, so this bylaw will adhere to the new Accessibility Act from BC, is what my concern is.
Ms. Scott, because I'm not sure where they're at on it. Regards to the accessibility committee.
The accessibility plan that's supposed to be developed by the Accessibility Advisory Committee?
Correct.
I don't even know where that committee is at and even developing that accessibility plan. All local governments were required to have an approved accessibility plan by sometime in 2023. And so I don't know where the Accessibility Advisory Committee is on providing us with even a draft accessibility plan.
Follow-up, Councillor Jilek.
Yeah, I guess my concern is maybe finding out this accessibility plan would affect anything within our bylaw.
The accessibility plan will not, these are the accessibility guidelines from the province. Those will be the minimum, at least, right? So if we include these in here now, these are at least the minimum. So if the new accessibility plan goes above and beyond, then those are amendments that we could make to the zoning bylaw if we needed to. But at the very least, these are the minimums that we have to make sure that we do.
Cool, good. Okay. Any other questions from council in regards to that? Go ahead.
Okay, the last board that we will be presenting tomorrow just talks about usability and format of the zoning bylaw and kind of how it's laid out. Again, we'll have copies of the full draft available for the community to look at, and you guys have it in front of you today. So if you have any concerns about how it's laid out, we can talk about that. But again, we kind of followed a typical standard format that we find is quite community friendly for administration, but as well as the public.
Councillor Jilek.
So if we were to, so when you're asking this, you're saying this document that we received as the draft, you're wondering if that is what we want it to look like when we're all said and done. All right. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know yet.
Yeah, this isn't coming for our readings. This is just more information. I just have one question. It'll be on the third page of the big target map, and it's under recycling depot, and it says public and institutional is the only place it's marked. Would bottle recycling fall under that same thing? Or are we talking when it comes to that larger recycling depot like the one that municipality runs? It's the third page on the big one.
Yeah, I think that was the intent, that it would be the one that the municipality runs. Are there private bottle depots?
That's why I asked that question, because we actually have a local recycling depot, so for bottles and such, that's actually in our light commercial.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that I looked through the thing and I couldn't find anywhere else within the information where it talked about, whether it was bottle recycling depots. The only one I could find was where it said recycling depot,
Yeah.
but it's obviously a business,
Yeah.
a private business for recycling.
We'll
I
have
just want to
to,
make sure we don't, isolate that as here you go, you got to move to a different area,
yeah, for sure.
that we've captured that.
We'd have to, it either have to fit into a existing definition, we'll have to review them, or we'll add a new definition
Okay.
for like a private recycling depot or.
Yeah, and I couldn't find, like I said, I went through the draft. I
Yeah.
couldn't find it elsewhere except for when it talked about it. It, you know, I mean, to me, it looked like it was, as a recycling
Yeah.
depot, it was talking about the
big-
larger one that's, you know, the municipality runs when it comes to cardboard and all
Yeah.
that, so.
So
Okay.
for bottle depot that currently in town, what zone are they? Which area are they
They're in the light commercial,
in? Light commercial?
C2.
C2.
Okay.
Okay. We just don't want to create this non-conforming use, right? So-
Well, that's, my concern is making sure we don't miss something that is already established here.
And that the definition of recycling depot says for sorting bottles and cans.
Yeah.
So
We have to clarify.
That's the only one I could find, and to me, and then in here, the only one I could find was under the P, public and,
Then it should, yeah, it goes to C2 then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay,
even highway commercial, still okay to have that
I think so.
recycling
I would
depot.
think,
So we can also add that in.
but there should be a size restriction. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That's a
Yeah.
great point.
Third last board, we just have some general questions. Concerns regarding the zoning bylaw, concerns about the format. If you have concerns about how it impacts your property, we've asked people to kind of leave their comments there, or they can on the paper survey or online. And any additional questions or clarifications we're asking tomorrow. And did we miss something? So this would be where we would put private commercial recycling depot. And that's it.
okay, any questions from council? Councillor Clickash?
Yes, I noticed in the paperwork here that you had setbacks of 7.5 meters, and also on a few pages, it got it at 8 meters, 8.5 meters. So wouldn't that be a little bit confusing for people that are trying to administer this? Because it has in the past only been 7.5 meters.
Which,
We can look at page 39. It shows 8.5 meters. Page 27 shows 7.5 meters.
So that's page 27 and 28 in your guys' draft.
Okay. So on the graphic, 8.5 meter, but actually it's 7.5 meter in the chart. Is that
Yeah.
right?
yeah, we can change that. Yeah, that's
It's just that
typo.
when people look at it, it's a little bit difficult.
Thank you.
The other thing was, I noticed that on mobile homes, you had a Z240Z, or a Z240. And you only will allow that in a mobile home park. Well, you can have a Z240 built to the snow load and everything that's required here in insulation value, and it'll still say Z240Z, and instead of the A277, and we have a couple of them here already,
Okay.
and they're in R2.
Sorry, which page for the definition?
Pardon me?
Would you let me know which page are you,
I'm just going off the
oh, that one,
front page.
the dimension part of it.
But 4.2.4. I know we tried to ensure that our policies on mobile and modular homes were in line with the BC Building Code. I know we worked with Dustin through this section. 4.2.4. 4.24, sorry. Down. Page 36.
Because it doesn't matter what type they bring into town. If it's going on a lot in town, in an R lot, then it has to meet the snow load and the insulation value. And that's the only difference between, and it's got a metal structure underneath it. But if it's placed on pilings and then welded to the pilings, becomes a permanent type of unit.
Are you saying that would then fit in the definition of a modular home?
Yes. Because they are coming in two separate sections.
Okay. So then you're saying you'd like to allow a mobile home in all residential zones?
Yeah, I believe that's the way it should be.
That was something that I know we discussed.
Yes, we, modular homes, that's apparently just everybody on the same page, that modular homes is a types of construction method, right? So you had it modular, so it's allowed everywhere in the town for residential or even commercial. And the mobile homes, so now I'm just trying to get myself understand it. So you feel like this mobile homes meeting certain requirements may be allowed in some of the residential area?
Yes, when they're ordered properly and they meet the requirement for the snow load, the insulation value, and they do have a metal structure holding everything together, their floor together. But then when they put them on the site, they drill pilings and they actually weld them to the pilings. So then it becomes a permanent structure that can't be moved. I mean, it could be moved, but it'd be a lot of work. There's no wheels under it or anything else.
Okay, so basically, certain types of mobile homes meeting a few requirements, the one we talk about, then could be still allowed in all the residential zones.
That's right.
We'll do some research and get that cleared. That sounds very special.
Ms. Scott, maybe that's something we should tag down for if Mr. Curry gave some information, that we have the proper information for staff to be able to follow through on it. Ms. Scott? Like, I'm not sure he supplied, but I don't want to, I never understand where Councillor Clickash is coming from, but I'm assuming staff has supplied some information, and to me, if we're going to be looking at trying to add stuff or something, obviously needs to be discussed by council and that, but we need to make sure staff are able to verify when these mobile homes come into the community.
That's right.
That's a lot, like, I'm not sure what stipulations, but,
That's
you know, just to make
exactly
sure.
what happens.
Okay.
I think we dealt with that, because in that case, with that kind of a home, we would consider that to be a modular home, which would be allowed. And so I think that's the difference, that just the difference in the manufacturer, with the things that you're talking about, changes it from being a mobile home to a modular home, and modular homes are allowed.
If we could just circle back just to make sure we have that. Is that good, Councillor Clickash?
Yeah, well, it's still not an A277, which is a modular home. You know, so
Okay.
it's a mobile home. It's still classed as a mobile home.
Gotcha.
Meets all the requirements.
As a modular home.
Modular home.
Sure. I seen staff writing the notes, just to make sure we can circle back, to make sure it's trackable. Councillor Julik?
My first question is, this is just drop in tomorrow, right? There's no presentation, just as I put it out there, out on my Facebook stuff, that there's that. And I would just like to say that I can look at this map and know up in my area on Canuso Place, there are modular homes or mobiles homes, and they are not marked on this map. And I can say even the bench below me, there's also a spot where those are, and they aren't marked on here. Just to keep in mind as staff works through there, yeah, because there's definitely those spaces in the community, other than what you guys have marked here as MHL and MHP. So,
Yeah, no, and those are modulars up top. Councillor Norbury?
Just be grandfathered in, 'cause they,
Oh, maybe they.
no, yeah.
I mean, one of the option is we just grandfather in what they are, but we're not going to give them a zoning that allow what they are doing right now. Okay, not just grandfather in.
Thanks,
Go ahead,
Mike.
Councillor.
Thanks, Mike Kalka. Can I nail you down on where tiny homes fit into this? Like I see garden suites, carriage houses, secondary suites. Can we have just some specificity on what class they would be under? How they be?
What class?
So how, like, I don't see tiny homes specifically referenced in this, and that's the biggest question that I have, is people asking about tiny
would
homes.
say-
Is it classified under garden suite? Is it classified under secondary suite? Or is it just nothing?
Well, if a tiny home, if the interpretation of a tiny home is a standalone small dwelling unit, it would be a garden suite.
Thank you. That's what I'm reading here as well, but also people are gonna ask, and I wanna be able to say very specifically, yes, we're allowing it, it's classified as under garden suite. Thank you.
Definition.
Councillor Klikash?
Yes, my understanding of a tiny home, though, is one that's put on a, or a couple of them have been put on one lot. And they're just smaller houses, they smaller footprint. And, but they can go up in height, whatever the height restriction is for that area. But it's a small, like a narrow house.
Right, and, well, and it depends on the definition of a tiny home, which we haven't defined in the bylaw, but
Okay,
depending, but it could, I mean, I think I've seen tiny homes as a secondary suite, or I guess you could see them on their own lot. Typically, I've seen them only on a secondary suite, as a secondary suite, but I guess in the R1 zone we have, which is a residential single detached small lot, you would build a smaller home. You could call that a tiny home too. It would just depend kind of how you'd want it defined,
right,
yeah.
so maybe we should do that, define it.
Good.
So how was it, just a quick question, how was it decided where manufactured home lots are allowed? Because there's lots that have been missed here. Never mind just where Councillor Julik has talked about up top. But why have we decided that we're not going to allow them in certain areas now?
Well, right now, the zoning allows a manufactured home to be built on a variety of residential zones. So just because the zoning map shows a variety of R2 zones, that means the current bylaw could have allowed a manufactured home to be built in R2, which is why they're there now. So yeah, the zoning map reflects the zones, not necessarily the specific uses in each zone that are currently permitted.
Okay, so like I see on the big long filled out one, we allow them in R2, so they can be allowed up there anyways.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
'Cause I just heard about grandfathering the ones that are in up there.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't unsure about the specific zone that they exist in currently, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So R2 modular homes can be in R2 district-wide.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Modular homes can be in R2 district-wide.
District what?
Yeah, district-wide, anywhere within the,
District-wide. Oh, yeah,
anywhere
sorry.
within R2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Klikash?
Yes, Your Worship, R2, modular homes are going into R2 are required to have either be on pilings or they have to have a foundation. It can be a 4-foot foundation, like a crawl space, heated crawl space, or it can be just a regular basement type. And they're built so that they can, span and be used that way. So that's why they're in R2 right now,
Yeah.
because they met the requirements.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions from council? Ms. Scott, I'm assuming this is the first couple days that staff has had a chance to look at this? Is there any questions from staff?
Staff has reviewed it. I think the majority of the questions that we have had so far have been addressed. That's not to say we won't have any additional questions coming up after the open house as well.
Okay,
But yes, staff has reviewed.
okay. Okay, anything else from council? All right, anything else from you guys? You guys are good? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Ms. Scott, are there any emailed in questions?
No.
Thank you. Take a motion for adjournment, please. Councillor Noxana,
That the October 29th, 2024 special council meeting be adjourned.
seconder. Councillor Julik, all in favor? Carried.